家早上好, buenos dias, and good morning. My name is Maria, the Colombian Chinese reporter for WOW TV, and welcome to another segment of the Georgia Strait Weekly with our chief editor, Charlie Smith. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks, Maria.
I'm also doing very well. So on this week's issue, the topic is healthy living, and we have Ryan Darcy. He's a neuroscientist on the cover, and he's doing some great things for the Surrey Memorial Hospital. So can you expand on this?
Yeah, this is a very interesting development. Ryan Darcy was born in BC. He's not that old. He's 41 years old, and he grew up in Williams Lake, and went to University of Victoria, and then he decided he was fascinated with the brain, so he became a neuroscientist, and he did a postdoc in Winnipeg, and then he was hired to this position in Halifax, where he was given a great deal of responsibility to try to create this medical cluster of companies which could work with what's called neurotechnology. There's neuroscience, which is basically the study of the brain, the function, the structure of the brain. And some neuroscientists might be interested in things like neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or ALS or Parkinson's disease. What his keen interest is in helping people with brain injuries, which can be people with strokes, but can also be people who are injured. So the most famous person that he has worked with was Trevor Green, Captain Trevor Green, who was injured in Afghanistan. He was actually a Vancouver journalist. He lives in Nanaimo now. And he had this amazing recovery. So this kind of helped cement his reputation, although he has a great reputation. And he always he says, I wanted to do this on home soil. So SFU, they hired him. It was actually a position that was funded by the Surrey Memorial Hospital Foundation as well as the provincial government, but SFU has hired him to head up this attempt to turn Surrey into a center for dealing with people with brain injuries, and also to deal with geriatric care and using technology to improve the lives of people in care homes. So this is his thing, and it's a big deal. And so I decided to go out and interviewed him, spent an hour with him, wrote a big feature story, and he's on the cover of our paper.
Very cool. And where's the funding for his project coming from?
Well, what he's doing, you've got some provincial funding and Fraser Health as well, and Simon Fraser, but what he's done is they're getting all of the universities involved. See, one of the problems in Surrey is the population's growing so rapidly. 1,000 people a month are moving there. They only have one acute care hospital in Surrey, which is Surrey Memorial. Yeah, Peace Arch Hospital is in White Rock. So you have a population approaching 500,000 people. You know, you look at Vancouver in comparison. What have we got? We've got St. Paul's Hospital. We've got Vancouver General Hospital. We've got a facility called Holy Family, which deals with rehab. We've got Mount St. Joseph's Hospital. We have, there's a hospital at UBC, deals a lot of psychiatric care and sports injuries and things like that. And then you go right across Boundary Road and you've got Burnaby General Hospital. You can go across the river and you've got Richmond General, you've got Lionsgate on the North Shore, you've got Royal Columbian. So we're very well served with acute care hospitals north of the Fraser River, but south of the Fraser River, there's a real shortage. And so they're dealing with some serious capacity problems. Surrey Memorial has the busiest emergency room in BC, second busiest in Canada, and it's a very busy hospital. So his goal, Ryan Darcy's, is if they can use technology to be able to assess people with brain injuries, because these are the difficult ones. Do you release them? Do you not release them? How can you tell what they're capable of doing? And so he's hoping to use technology to actually help deal with the pressures on the healthcare system.
I can see that technology is very important in this sense. What are some examples he mentioned about using technology in care homes and helping aging people and healthy aging?
Yeah, one of the issues on the aging is care homes are changing. Like, one of the biggest dangers for seniors is actually falls, because they can break their hip, and that can actually be fatal for a senior. So, because once you're injured, then you're not moving and you're not exercising, and then all sorts of other problems. So one of the things they're looking at is putting airbags in wheelchairs.
Airbags in wheelchairs.
So that if you fall, if you have a problem. Another thing is changing the flooring to make it maybe less likely that you would either have a fall, or if you do have a fall, that you're going to suffer the same injury.
So there'll be less impact.
Yeah. Another one is just video surveillance for dealing with dementia. So, but it's not just the care homes too. One of the things he's looking at is how can you monitor the brain in the same way you can monitor, for other health problems. You can get your cholesterol levels checked, which can, determine your risk for heart disease. You can have your blood pressure checked, which might be an indication of your risk for stroke. But there's no vital signs like that for the brain. So he's looking at, well, how can you measure the functioning of the brain, do it outside of the laboratory or the hospital, but bring that to the community or even to regional care clinics. So then if you discharge someone from the hospital, that they could actually go in, like I can walk into Shoppers Drug Mart and I can check my blood pressure. Is there a way of doing brain vital signs? And this is a new area of research. So that's his thing, and I think it's quite exciting to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely very exciting and very cool indeed. So Ryan Darcy talks about the importance of health in care homes and the brain health, basically. But there's also a topic including emotional health and spirituality and educating the heart. And Dalai Lama is coming to Vancouver, his fourth time in 10 years. Can you tell us a little bit about the purpose of the trip?
Yeah, this is very interesting. The Dalai Lama has had a deep roots in BC, actually. He is a good friend and somebody who's been here for many years. Victor Chan has co-wrote books with him. One of his major focus when he comes to Vancouver isn't so much spreading his Buddhist faith, although that's something that he's not opposed to, obviously, but it's really been about education. And he is a big promoter of this. How do you educate the heart? And he issued a challenge to BC educators on his earlier visits. And so they've taken up the challenge. So we have been doing things in British Columbia that has largely gone under the radar screen of how do you deal with things like bullying? How do you deal with creating more empathetic students? And so professors like at UBC particularly have been looking at this, and how can you build this into the curriculum? How can you train future teachers to do this? And so Victor Chan believes, and I interviewed him about this, that BC's a real world leader in this area of kind of empathy education. One of the phrases they use is emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman pioneered that, and he's a former New York Times science writer who speaks a lot about this with the Dalai Lama as part of his group of advisors. So when he comes to Vancouver, he's going to be visiting John Oliver's secondary school. So he'll be on the stage with some students and the audience, but he's also here to learn about how the progress has unfolded. And it's one of the phrases they like to use is mindfulness, mindful education. How can you be a little more contemplative? And when you do that, and the students who undergo this type of training, there's a correlation between having higher results on standardized exams. So there's an increasing belief that there are links between that and the educational outcomes. And another area he's focused on is the first 5 years of life. That's often when the neural pathways are developed in the brain, which is, how our brains function. And one of the things people don't realize is as human beings evolved, the more of our brain development occurs after birth. So the first 18 months, there's a lot of brain development occurring. So the children, the infants, need a kind of a steady state from their parents, and if they get that sense of stability, so this is an area Daniel Siegel, who's also been someone who the Dalai Lama has relied on, he's a researcher at UCLA who has focused a lot about this process of attunement, the connection between the primary caregiver and the infant, and how that leads to healthy brain development. So One of the issues that we also covered in our Georgia Straight this week was screen time, because some people look at this and they say when you throw infants in particular in front of computer screens or television screens and the images are moving really rapidly, it actually can impair the development of the neural pathways, which can actually lead to the release of healthy opiates, dopamine, serotonin. And so if you interfere with the development of the brain in that early years, that can be a predictor of susceptibility to addiction. So it's all very interesting and complicated, but I'm very happy to see that Vancouver is really a leader in looking at these areas, and then how can you embed it into education? That's a long answer, Maria, but it's something I'm quite passionate about and find it very intriguing.
Oh, for sure. So the Dalai Lama is spreading education of the heart, and we have Ryan Darcy talking about the brain.